Alright. Everybody ready? So we can begin the lecture. Mainly focusing on assisting in the documentaries. This is what we'll be covering, index, introductions, the test in general, methods, hypothesis, participants, findings, and conclusions. Any questions before we begin?
Yes.
No. Not really a question.
I have a question.
What's your question?
If you could have a dog or a cat, what would you have?
I have 2 cats already. I don't think I want any more pets. So assuming we don't have any more questions, let's go ahead and begin. Alright, so of course you can read this, although obviously before even beginning your research study, you'll have to follow certain steps. These steps having to obviously equip your little clipboard, basically giving you a little tutorial on how to even begin writing a document. You go into a little clipboard, press new document, go into foundation research study, and not just the normal documentary, because there are different things for different types of subjects. Basically, after that, you'll fill out the top part, which is on the top right of the document, I believe. And that's basically where you fill in the basics and whatnot. And of course, when you're listing stuff, make sure you have both the label for the SCP and the participants and whatnot. Now, moving on to the index. The index is basically where you will have mainly everything labeled out. Stuff as the introduction, tests, all that stuff. For obvious reasons, this will make your document more easy to navigate, basically allowing you to, and others reviewing your documents, to have an easier time and possibly give you a better rating. Any questions about that?
Yes.
What's your question?
If you had to pick one animal to have, what would it be?
I have 2 cats, please stop asking about my pets. Now, moving on to the introduction. For example, you can see a picture of a introduction of 035's test. An introduction to the research study that you'll be writing down. Basically, at least have an image, but the image is not mandatory. I'll recommend. Basically, also describing the physical properties and whatnot. Also, what it's mainly known for. Of course, depending on how you would like to write, you can use small text or large text. Small text for having more information written down, and normal text for, having a decent amount, and if you don't want to write as much. Now, going on to the actual aiming. Basically, this will be the aim of the study. It should come mainly after the tests. So, basically, this is what you should know before when you're doing the test in the first place, basically. Going off the same experiment that we were speaking off of, from this man who written the document, he uses basically to learn about 035's telepathic capabilities and whatnot. And basically, he aimed to understand the dangers and what it could cause. As you can tell, 035 is more or less considered similar to an incognito hazard. I'm not sure it's fully documented by the previous director of research. However, if in a certain amount of time, he is able to sort of always manipulate the targets. Now for the method. The methods basically show what you'll be using for the actual documentation itself, what you'll be planning to use. What you're planning to even... Well, it's a method, what do you expect? It summarizes what you'll be doing for the test. For an example, let's say you're having a syringe attempting to get samples. The method would be you'd be giving a Class D a syringe before entering them into the chamber, making sure they won't be in danger and whatnot. Now for the hypothesis. Big word, I know. The hypothesis is basically what should come after the methods. Then again, the order is all up to your choice, as long as these are before your actual test. These should be written down beforehand. If you're going through the trouble of even studying, then you should have at least an some slight expectation and whatnot. And basically, what you expect to happen in the test and what could possibly change. Then again, that's what will be happening during the test. After that, this section is more or less optional, since there is a participants option in the little thing that you look when you're first beginning to write the document, although this should come in a certain order. The participants is basically showing on, you know, who assisted you in the project. Let's say if you're having a D class, then you'll write his name down, along with him being a D class and what type of officers or guards and whatnot. Now for the finding. Findings should come after the little test. Basically what you found after doing the test. They should be describing what you've learned and to be in a whole, basically. If you're doing a little interview, I'd recommend having a different section for live records of what you've done for the interview and whatnot. But basically the findings are basically to write down what you found. Now lastly, the conclusion. The conclusion is what is the total result of the tests. It shouldn't be too long depending on how big the result was. Although if it is a large test, then the conclusion should be, well, large. And of course, after all this, you should be done. And I believe if you don't have any further questions, that should be the lecture.